Chandamama Mahabharata, Part 14. Draupadi's Swayamvaram. Hearing about Draupadi's Swayamvaram, kings from many countries arrived in the city of Kampilya. Accommodations were arranged for them in different places. The Pandavas stayed at the house of a potter and continued to sustain themselves by gathering alms. Draupadi, too, kept his desire to give his daughter in marriage to Arjuna unspoken. Instead, he arranged a bow that was impossible to string and decreed that he would marry his daughter to the person who could strike down the target fish fixed in the sky using that bow. Hearing this proclamation, Karna, the sons of Dhritarashtra, and kings from many other nations arrived. Numerous sages also came with the intention of witnessing the Swayamvaram festivities, and they accepted Draupadi's welcome and hospitality. The Swayamvaram pavilion was constructed toward the northeast direction of the city and was beautifully decorated. Raised platforms were arranged to enable everyone to sit comfortably. Kshatriyas and Brahmans arrived there and took their respective suitable seats. The Pandavas, who sat together with the Brahmans, felt immense joy upon witnessing Draupadi's grandeur. The guests spent their time for several days enjoying the entertainment of dance and music. On the final day, Draupadi took her auspicious ceremonial bath, adorned herself with all ornaments, wore fine vestments, and entered the center of the Swayamvaram pavilion holding a garland of golden flowers. Sunka, who was Draupadi's priest, had already spread sacred grass around the sacrificial altar, performed the sacred fire ritual, and blessed Draupadi. As soon as Draupadi arrived, the auspicious musical instruments began to resonate. Then Dhrishtadyumna came to the center of the pavilion, signaled the instruments to stop, and showed the bow, the 5 arrows, and the target fish fixed above to the kings seated around. He announced that his sister would marry the person who strings these 5 arrows to this bow and strikes down that target fish, inviting those with proficiency in archery to come forward and try according to their capabilities. Afterwards, he pointed out different kings to Draupadi, stated their names, and introduced them. Among them, along with Duryodhan and his brothers, were Shalya, Virata, Shakuni, Ashwathama, Akrira, Samba, Pradyumna, Krishna, Kritvarma, Aniruddha, Susharma, Shishupala, Chitrangada, Bhagdatta, Pondraka Vasudev, and many others. Everyone present kept gazing intently at Draupadi, who appeared like the 6th arrow of the love god. Krishna recognized the Pandavas seated among the Brahmans and informed Balram. The attempt to strike down the target fish commenced. Each prince came forward one by one, and when even stringing the bow proved impossible, they moved away in humiliation. After many encountered failure, Karna stepped forward, raised the bow, and began to aim the arrow. Everyone believed that he would certainly win Draupadi. The bards began to sing praises of Karna. Hearing that, Draupadi shouted aloud for all to hear, stating that she would not choose a charioteer's son. Karna, smiling despite his anger, looked toward the sun and walked back. After Karna, Shishupala, Jarasandha, and Shalya failed as they could not aim the bow. Thereafter, no other kings stepped forward. A commotion arose among the spectators. At that moment, Arjuna rose from among the Brahmans and approached the bow. Seeing this, the Brahmans were astonished and remarked among themselves that this Brahman youth was going to handle a bow that was beyond the capacity of even mighty warriors like Shalya, Jarasandha, and Shishupala, and that he would certainly bring humiliation to the Brahmans. Some others, however, reasoned that he must possess strength and skill in weaponry, otherwise he would not approach that bow. Arjuna approached the bow, offered his respects to the assembly, bowed to the weapon, offered a silent salutation to his preceptor, and thinking of Krishna, aimed the 5 arrows at that bow as effortlessly as if he were stringing the bow he used every day, and brought down the target fish with a single strike. Everyone was stunned for a moment. Then, the cheers of joy reached the skies. The Brahmans waved their upper garments in happiness. At that very moment, Dharmaraja took Nakula and Sahadev and left for his accommodation. Draupadi, however, remained watching Arjuna from a distance with joy and wonder. The kings who had come to the Swayamvaram felt a great sense of humiliation. They complained that Draupadi had made them climb the tree and pushed them down before they could pluck the fruit. Will he deny his daughter to a prince and give her to a Brahman instead? Has a Swayamvaram ever existed among Brahmans? How can this maiden marry a Brahman? To prevent such a thing from happening again, we must take Drupad's life. If this girl chooses one of the princes, well and good, otherwise, she must be cast into the fire. Since he is a Brahman, let us leave this Brahman boy alive, the kings said as they brandished swords and maces and surrounded Drupad. Terrified, Drupad sought refuge among the Brahmans. Bhima and Arjuna intervened against the kings who had turned against Drupad. When the kings began to shower arrows, Bhima uprooted a tree and stood beside Arjuna, using it to deflect the arrows of the kings. The Brahmans began to hurl stones at the kings to protect Drupad. Arjuna restrained them and confronted the kings using the same bow with which he had struck the target fish. Seeing this, Shalya, Karna, and the others concluded that even if the person opposing them was a Brahman, he was worthy of being slain. Arjuna faced Karna and engaged in battle. Astonished by Arjuna's valor, Karna remarked, "O Brahman, I admire your skill in weaponry. There is no one other than Arjuna who can fight on equal terms with me. Tell me truly, who are you?" But Arjuna did not disclose his identity. Deeming the spiritual radiance of a Brahman to be invincible, Karna ceased fighting. In the meantime, the battle between Shalya and Bhima was underway. Finally, Bhima seized Shalya, lifted him up, and having no intention of killing him, cast him away at a distance. All the Brahmans burst into laughter. The remaining princes could neither move their hands nor their legs. However, it became clear to everyone that these mighty heroes were no ordinary Brahmans. The curiosity to know who they were also intensified. Krishna also addressed the kings, saying, "These Brahmans have won Draupadi rightfully. They have fought a righteous war among kings. Therefore, do not provoke a conflict with them." Following his counsel, the kings departed on their respective ways. Meanwhile, Kunti, who was waiting at the potter's house, was feeling anxious as her sons had not returned for a long time, fearing what harm might have befallen them due to Duryodhan and his allies. Just then, Dharmaraja arrived with Nakula and Sahadev. A short while later, Bhima and Arjuna arrived along with Draupadi. Upon entering, they called out to their mother inside, "Mother, we have brought alms." Kunti Devi replied from within, "Share it equally among yourselves, my sons." When she stepped outside, she was stunned to see the resplendent Draupadi. She said to Dharmaraja, "My son, a great mistake has been committed by me. When Bhima and Arjuna mentioned bringing alms, I told everyone to share it equally. I have never spoken an untruth. While if all of you take this maiden, it would become adharma, my word would become false if you do not. Therefore, reflect upon a path of righteousness and act accordingly." Dharmaraja thought for a moment, consoled Kunti not to grieve, and told Arjuna, "You marry this maiden in the presence of the sacred fire." To that, Arjuna replied, "How would that be possible? How can I marry before you and Bhima, who are my elder brothers?" But at that time, all 5 Pandavas had set their hearts upon Draupadi. Understanding his mother's words, Arjuna's statement, and the affection arising toward Draupadi within himself, Dharmaraja declared, "All of us shall marry this maiden." In the meantime, Krishna arrived along with Balram, seeking out the lodging where the Pandavas were staying. Seeing him offer salutations to himself and to Kunti Devi, Dharmaraja asked, "Krishna, we are living in disguise in the garb of Brahmans. How did you recognize us? How did you come here?" Krishna smiled and replied, "O king, how can fire ever be concealed? Is the valor displayed today at the Swayamvaram possible for anyone other than the Pandavas? It is fortunate that the conspiracy of the wicked Duryodhan did not succeed. It is best for you to remain unrecognized for now." Taking leave of the Pandavas, he departed along with Balram. Meanwhile, Dhrishtadyumna took action. It was unknown who the Brahman was who had struck the target fish and won Draupadi, where he was staying, or where he would take Draupadi. Therefore, Dhrishtadyumna secretly followed the other Brahmans, arrived at the potter's house behind Arjuna, and hid himself in a spot. After Krishna and Balram departed, Bhima, Arjuna, Nakula, and Sahadev went out and brought the gathered grains. Kunti instructed Draupadi to set aside a portion of it for offerings and guests, and then divide the remainder into 2 parts, giving one part to Bhima and serving the other part to the remaining 4. Draupadi did exactly as instructed. After their meal, Sahadev spread sacred grass. Over it, he spread deer skins, and everyone lay down to sleep. Draupadi slept near the feet of the Pandavas. Then, the Pandavas spoke among themselves, debating and discussing strategies for breaking military formations and the deployment and withdrawal of various astras. Dhrishtadyumna, who listened from his hiding place, confirmed that they were indeed Kshatriyas disguised as Brahmins and returned home to inform his father. Only 2 individuals escorted our maiden, but there were 3 others where they stayed, along with their mother. There is no doubt they are noble Kshatriyas. I suspect they are the Pandavas, Dhrishtadyumna reported. Hearing these words, Drupad rejoiced that his desire was fulfilled. He sent his priest to bring more detailed information about them. Chandamama Mahabharata, Part 14 is complete. For now, Swasti.